In 1696, William Kidd is a celebrated veteran of the British sea battles against the French. Kidd has risen to the rank of captain, working as a privateer, plundering enemy ships in the service of His Majesty's government.
The only thing that differed between pirates and privateers was a piece of paper.
That paper was known as a letter of marque.
When you got a privateering commission, you got a letter of marque from the government that allowed you to capture foreign ships legally. This was not piracy, this was privateering. He got this offer, this opportunity to capture French merchant ships or any ship traveling with a French letter of passage, to take their treasure and then divide it up with the people who backed his mission.
On September 6, 1696, Captain Kidd set sail out of New York Harbor aboard a swift, well-armed ship named the Adventure Galley.
He's been given a crew of over 150 men, which will give him loads of resources to rob very large ships, guaranteeing the most successful voyage of his entire career.
Then, on January 30, 1698, nearly 16 months after leaving New York Harbor, Kidd is off the coast of India when his crew spots a large merchant ship ahead.
She's sitting low in the water, which means she's a heavy cargo ship. She's flying a French color. And for Kidd, this is perfect because his letter of marque entitles him to take French vessels and the assets that are on board. This is a legitimate prize.
Kidd's ship pulls up alongside its prey with its guns loaded and ready to fire. The merchant ship quickly surrenders.
On board is a king's ransom and treasure.
It's the ship Captain Kidd has dreamt of. It is filled with really expensive textiles such as muslins, calico, silks. It's full of opium, other items like tobacco and teas, sugar, and salt. All of these goods might amount to $12 million in today's currency.
Now his crew are going to have everything they want, and his investors are going to get the return on their investment.
Kidd comes across a very large chest that is double padlocked with iron. And to his absolute astonishment, it's filled with gold bars, silver, coins, rubies, emeralds, diamonds, amounting to about $2.4 million in today's currency.
But the problem is, Kidd is quite nervous about it because he discovers this was basically Armenian merchants on an Indian ship with a local crew, and it has an English captain who presents a French letter of passage. And he also says it's a legitimate capture.
The Quedagh merchant is under the protection of the French. He's carrying a French pass. But the Quedagh merchant is actually a vessel belonging to the Grand Mogul.
The Grand Mogul, Aurangzeb Alamgir, heads the Mughal Empire of India, ruling a vast expanse of South Asia. On his voyage home, Kidd makes a stop on the Caribbean island of Anguilla.
When everybody lands on shore, they hear the horrible news. Captain Kidd is now a wanted pirate and will be sentenced to hang if captured.
Powerful forces are working against Captain Kidd. The Grand Mogul of India owns the Quedagh merchant, and he's angry that Kidd took it as a prize. The Mogul's displeasure threatens British trade in South Asia and the profits of Britain's East India Trading Company.
Captain Kidd wound up the most wanted man in the empire because the Indies was such an important new trading opportunity for the British.
By the late 17th century, the East India Company is already one of the most powerful conglomerates in the world. They are establishing good trading relationships with the Indian Mughals, so there is virtually everything in the world at stake for them to make sure they can protect their trading relationships with India, so that way the East India Company can continue to survive and thrive.
So with the capture of the Quedagh merchant, the Grand Mogul wanted his ship back. He wanted the goods that were on board. He wanted the products and the treasure, and he wanted somebody to pay the price. Kidd was that man.
They threaten the East India Company that if Kidd is not captured and not made an example of, they will not only cut off all trade, they will consider it an act of war.
It's costing millions of pounds in trade. This problem has to be fixed. Kidd must be taken.
The British government agrees to go after their own man, even if he might be innocent.
So even with his letter of marque, even though he thought he had the right to take these vessels, things have changed. It's turned into a political game. So Kidd now's in an impossible position. He can't stay on board the Quedagh merchant, and he can't let his treasure go. So what he has to do is find a way out of this.
He realizes that he is on a vessel that is easily recognizable, and in order for him to get back and prove his innocence, he actually needs to sneak into New York, and so he needs to find a boat that will let him enter the harbor there without detection.
But first, Kidd must part with some of the Quedagh merchant's valuable cargo.
Kidd basically has to do a fire sale and sell off what he can, and then he needs to buy a ship. And so he sells off enough goods to have the money to buy a ship called the San Antonio and sail it back.
Kidd leaves the Quedagh merchant in Anguilla in the care of his friend Henry Bolton. But what becomes of the precious cargo he may have left on board?
Kidd leaves the ship with Bolton to go and clear his name. Bolton starts to get worried because he has the same fear that Kidd does. Now he's on this ship that sticks out like a sore thumb.
Bolton maneuvers the Quedagh merchant into a nearby Caribbean river called the Rio Dulce, where he abandons it and sets it on fire. Rumors abound as to how much treasure was actually left aboard the ship when it was burned and sunk.
For more than 300 years, the location of the Quedagh merchant and its possible sunken treasure remains a mystery. Then in 2007, some local residents are diving in shallow waters off an island near the Dominican Republic and come across an old cannon lying on the ocean floor.
In a collaboration between Indiana University and the Dominican Republic government, we began assessing this site and recovering data.
I happen to be hired on as the historian for the mission. I have the documents that say how many cannons they were and where they were placed. And so the cannon pretty much are just about exactly right.
This is the first clue that we may have the Quedagh merchant on our hands. The final piece of evidence was when we uncovered a much more significant section of hull, and we were able to actually identify the ship construction technique described in the historical document.
So we found the Quedagh merchant.
So the shipwreck itself didn't have any of what we normally think of as treasure. There was no gold, no silver, no jewels. Any of the organic materials had most likely decomposed or broken down, like the fabrics, the silks, the muslins, the sugar. None of the booty was actually found. One could assume that A, it was looted before the ship sank, or B, Kidd took everything with him for this journey.
That there wasn't any of Captain Kidd's treasure found on the wreckage of the Quedagh merchant just doesn't prove that all of that treasure left the Caribbean. His friend Henry Bolton could have taken some of that treasure and kept it. Kidd could have buried some of it to come back and get it later.
Some people have speculated that Kidd hid treasure in the Caribbean. I mean, Kidd was there, and we know that for a fact because we have eyewitness accounts.
Some of that treasure could very well still be somewhere in the Caribbean.
Ever since the 1700s, people have been searching over and over for Captain Kidd's treasure. The romanticism about pirates doesn't just simply come from a rumor about Captain Kidd's buried treasure. It's Captain Kidd himself, because we see this conflict of whether or not he was a privateer or a pirate.
Everybody looks for treasure. And so here is a true buried treasure story, and lost treasure no less. So people are enthralled, and they continue to look for Captain Kidd's treasure everywhere from the Caribbean back to America.